Admiral Keffer stood on the bridge of his warship and watched the stars through the metal windows. His gray skin looked cold under the blue lights of the ship controls. The Zephyrian Empire had taken over 17 star systems in the last 200 years. Every planet they found either joined them or got destroyed. There was never a third choice. The communication officer turned toward the Admiral with excitement in his yellow eyes. "Sir, we have found something very interesting," he said while his thin fingers moved across the control panel. "We picked up radio signals from a small system near the edge of our territory. The signals are old, but they tell us about a planet called Earth." Keffer walked over to look at the data on the screen. The signals showed pictures and sounds from a blue and green planet. The creatures there called themselves humans, and they seemed weak and divided. Their technology was basic, and their weapons were simple. They used chemical rockets to barely reach their own moon and fought each other with metal bullets. "How long ago were these signals sent?" asked the Admiral as he studied the human faces on the screen. They looked soft and fragile compared to the hard shell skin of the Zephyrians. "About 50 of their years ago, sir," replied the officer. "The planet is only 12 light jumps from here. We could reach it in less than 1 month with our fastest ships." The Admiral smiled, showing his sharp teeth. In all their conquests, the Zephyrians had never found a species this primitive that had advanced enough to send radio signals into space. Most planets they conquered had either basic technology or were so advanced they put up a real fight before losing. These humans seemed to be caught right in the middle. On the planet Earth, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his office at the Earth Defense Force headquarters. The building was new and built after all the nations of Earth finally decided to work together. The walls were covered with maps of the solar system and pictures of the space stations that protected the planet. Jake looked at the reports on his desk with growing worry. The deep space monitoring stations had detected strange energy readings. At the edge of the solar system, the energy moved in patterns that no natural space object could make. Something was out there, and it was not from Earth. Dr. Lisa Parker knocked on the door and walked into the office. She carried a folder full of data printouts, and her face showed concern. Lisa was the smartest person Jake knew when it came to studying life from other planets. If anyone could figure out what the energy readings meant, it would be her. "Jake, you need to see this right away," she said while spreading the papers across his desk. "I have been studying the energy patterns for 3 days now. These are not natural formations, and they are definitely not human technology." Jake picked up one of the papers and looked at the wave patterns drawn on it. The lines moved in perfect mathematical sequences that looked almost like a language. "Are you saying these are from aliens?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "I am saying these energy signatures show technology that is hundreds of years ahead of anything we have," Lisa replied. "Whatever is making these signals has been watching our solar system for weeks. They are studying us, Jake." The captain stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the city. Millions of people lived normal lives below him, not knowing that something from another world was looking at their planet. "How many ships do you think are out there?" he asked. "The patterns suggest at least 5 large vessels, but there could be more hiding behind the outer planets," Lisa said. "Jake, we need to tell the president about this immediately. If these beings have hostile intentions, we are not ready for them." Meanwhile, on the Zephyrian scout ship, Commander Vexthari watched the human military exercises through long-range sensors. The humans flew small aircraft that burned fossil fuels and moved slower than ancient Zephyrian cargo ships. Their ground forces carried weapons that fired small metal projectiles and wore armor that would not stop even the weakest Zephyrian energy weapon. "This will be the easiest conquest in our history," Vexthari reported to Admiral Keffer over the communication system. "The humans have no energy shields, no plasma weapons, and no faster-than-light travel. Their largest weapons are crude missiles that use chemical explosives." The Admiral listened to the report with satisfaction. "How many humans live on this planet?" he asked. "Approximately 8 billion, sir," replied the commander. "That will provide enough workers for our mining operations in this sector for many generations." Should we begin the invasion immediately? No, said Kethfer after thinking for a moment. First, we will give them the standard surrender demand. It is more efficient when they submit without fighting. Prepare the ultimatum message and make sure it reaches every communication device on their planet. Let them know they have been found by the Zephyrian Empire. The Admiral turned away from the communication screen and looked out at the distant blue planet. Soon it would be just another conquered world in the Empire. The humans would learn what every other species had learned. Resistance was useless against Zephyrian power. They would work in the mines until they died, or they would die fighting. Either way, the planet would belong to the Empire. He did not know that humans were different from every other species the Zephyrians had ever encountered. He did not know that finding Earth would be the beginning of the end for his empire. The screens went black all across Earth at exactly noon. Every television, every computer, and every phone showed the same thing. A tall gray figure with yellow eyes appeared and began to speak in perfect English. The creature wore dark metal armor and stood in front of what looked like the bridge of a massive spaceship. People of Earth, I am Admiral Kethfer of the Zephyrian Empire, the alien said in a cold voice. Your planet has been selected for integration into our territory. You have two choices and you must decide quickly. President Helen Carter was in a meeting when every screen in the White House changed to show the alien message. Secret Service agents rushed into the room, but there was nothing they could do. The signal was coming from space, and it had taken control of every electronic device on the planet. You may surrender now and become workers in our mining operations, continued the Admiral. You will be fed and housed while you extract resources for the Empire. Your children will be educated to serve our needs, and your planet will be protected under our rule. The alien gestured with one clawed hand, and the screen showed images of other worlds. Creatures that looked like giant insects worked in deep mines while Zephyrian guards watched them. Other scenes showed cities in ruins and empty planets with no signs of life. Your second choice is to resist, said Kethfer with what might have been a smile. If you choose to fight us, your species will be eliminated completely. Your cities will be destroyed, your people will be killed, and your planet will be strip-mined until nothing remains. General Pete Williams grabbed a secure phone and tried to call the Pentagon, but the line was dead. Every military communication system on Earth had been shut down by the alien transmission. They were completely cut off from their own forces. You have 72 of your hours to give us your answer, the Admiral concluded. Send a representative to the coordinates we are transmitting now. Come alone and unarmed. Any attempt to bring weapons or additional ships will be considered an act of war. The transmission ended and normal communications slowly came back online. Within minutes, President Carter was on a video call with world leaders from every nation. The panic in their voices was clear even through the secure channels. We need to respond to this immediately, said the President to her advisors. General Williams, I want to know everything about our defensive capabilities. Dr. Parker, I need you to analyze that transmission and tell me what we are dealing with. Captain Jake Morrison volunteered to lead the diplomatic mission before anyone else could speak. He knew it was dangerous, but someone had to face the aliens and try to find a peaceful solution. The Starship Defiance was prepared for launch within 18 hours. The meeting location was near Jupiter, where the Zephyrian ship waited like a metal mountain floating in space. The alien vessel was 10 times larger than anything humans had ever built. Its dark hull showed no lights except for a small docking bay that opened as the Defiance approached. Jake walked through the alien corridors with 2 of his best officers. The walls were made of some kind of black metal and the air smelled like chemicals. Everything was designed for creatures much taller than humans, and the ceiling felt too high above their heads. The Zephyrian negotiation chamber was a large room with no chairs. Admiral Kethfer stood at the far end, surrounded by other alien officers. His yellow eyes studied the humans like they were interesting insects that had learned to walk upright. So you are the representatives of Earth, said the Admiral in his cold voice. You are smaller than I expected, and you look even weaker in person. Are you ready to discuss the terms of your surrender? Jake stepped forward and tried to keep his voice steady. "We are here to discuss peaceful coexistence, Admiral. Earth is willing to establish trade relations and share scientific knowledge, but we will not become slaves to your empire." The aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. "You misunderstand the situation, human," replied Kethver. "This is not a negotiation. You are here to accept our terms or to confirm that your species chooses death." "There has to be another way," said Jake, trying to remain calm. "Your empire is vast and powerful. Surely you do not need to enslave every species you encounter. We could be allies instead of subjects." The Admiral walked closer until he towered over the human captain. "In our 300 years of expansion, we have encountered 47 intelligent species," he said. 31 chose slavery and survived. 16 chose resistance and were eliminated. There is no third option. To demonstrate his point, Kethver gestured toward the wall, which became transparent. Outside the ship was a large asteroid floating in space. The Admiral spoke a command in his own language, and suddenly the asteroid exploded in a brilliant flash of light. When the glow faded, there was nothing left but glowing dust. "That is what happens to worlds that resist the Empire," said the Admiral. "Your weapons cannot harm our ships, and your defenses cannot stop our attack. Choose wisely, human." Jake looked at the empty space where the asteroid had been and felt fear run through his body. But he also felt something else growing inside him. It was anger at being threatened and determination to protect his homeworld. "Earth will never surrender to you," he said clearly. "Then Earth will be destroyed," replied Kethver. "You have 50 hours remaining to change your decision. After that, our invasion fleet will turn your planet into another asteroid field." The humans were escorted back to their ship, but Jake had managed to place several small recording devices around the Zephyrion vessel while the aliens were distracted by their threats. The devices were so tiny that the alien sensors did not detect them. As the Defiance flew back toward Earth, the recording devices transmitted everything they could hear from the alien ship. The data revealed battle plans, troop numbers, and most importantly, the Zephyrians' total contempt for human fighting ability. "They think this will be their easiest conquest ever," reported Dr. Lisa Parker after analyzing the intercepted communications. "They are only sending a small fleet because they expect us to surrender after the first attack." General Pete Williams studied the alien ship designs and weapon capabilities that the devices had recorded. "They are definitely more advanced than us," he admitted, "but they are also overconfident. They think we will fight like every other species they have conquered." President Carter looked around the war room at her top advisors. "Then we need to show them that humans fight differently than anyone else," she said. "General, I want every available ship armed and ready. Captain Morris and I need you to prepare our defenses. Dr. Parker, keep studying their technology for weaknesses." The countdown to invasion had begun and Earth was running out of time. But the aliens had made one crucial mistake. They had threatened humanity without understanding what humans were capable of when they were fighting for survival. General Pete Williams stood in front of a holographic map of the solar system surrounded by his top military commanders. Red dots showed where the Zephyrian ships were positioned while blue dots marked human defensive positions. The alien fleet was already moving into attack formation. "We have one advantage they do not know about," said the general, pointing to the outer planets. "They expect us to fight like a traditional military force. They think we will meet them in open space with our best ships and try to win through superior firepower." Captain Amy Rodriguez studied the tactical display with the eye of someone who had spent years fighting in Earth Special Forces. Before joining the space program, she had led operations in the most dangerous places on the planet. "What do you have in mind, General?" she asked. "Operation Tarpet," replied Williams. "We make them think they are winning while we drag them into the kind of fight that humans do best. Chaotic close-quarters combat where their advanced technology becomes a disadvantage." The plan was unlike anything in military history. Instead of building a traditional defense, Earth would appear weak and disorganized. The aliens would be lured into committing their entire fleet to what they thought was an easy victory. Only then would the real human defenses reveal themselves. Dr. Lisa Parker worked day and night with physicist Dr. Ken Taylor to find weaknesses in Zephyrian technology. The recordings from Jake Morrison's diplomatic mission had given them detailed scans of alien equipment. What they discovered changed everything. Their energy shields operate on specific frequencies, explained Dr. Parker to the assembled scientists. If we can modify our electronics to generate interference on those exact wavelengths, we can disrupt their defenses. Ken Taylor nodded and pulled up another set of data on his computer screen. Even better, their ships are almost completely automated. They rely on artificial intelligence for most of their systems. If we can cause electronic interference, it will affect their weapons navigation and life support. The work began immediately. Every human ship in the solar system was secretly modified with the new interference devices. Mining vessels, research stations, and even civilian transport ships were quietly armed with hidden weapons. The Zephyrians, watching from their distant positions, saw what looked like panicked preparations for a hopeless defense. Captain Jake Morrison took command of the hidden fleet that would spring the trap. His ships were disguised as asteroid mining operations scattered throughout the outer solar system. Each vessel carried enough firepower to destroy a Zephyrian cruiser, but from the outside they looked like harmless industrial equipment. The key is timing, Jake explained to his captains during a secret meeting. We let them get close enough to Earth that they cannot retreat quickly. Then we hit them from all sides at once. They will be trapped between our hidden fleet and the planet's defenses. Amy Rodriguez led the effort to prepare Earth's surface for invasion. Every major city was turned into a fortress, but the fortifications were hidden underground. The aliens would see normal human settlements until the shooting started. Then they would discover that every building, every street, and every tunnel had been designed for warfare. The Zephyrians have never fought an enemy that knows their own terrain this well, Amy told her commanders. They are used to conquering planets where the defenders are afraid and disorganized. They have never faced humans defending their home. The civilian population was evacuated to underground shelters that had been built in secret over the past 2 years. What the aliens did not know was that Earth's government had been preparing for this day since the first radio telescopes detected signs of intelligent life in other star systems. Dr. Ken Taylor made another crucial discovery while studying the Zephyrian ship designs. Their species has evolved to depend completely on their technology, he reported to the military leaders. They are physically weaker than humans, and they cannot function without their electronic systems. This information changed the entire battle plan. If the humans could disable the alien technology even temporarily, the Zephyrians would be helpless. Earth's forces began preparing electromagnetic pulse weapons and signal jammers designed specifically to target alien electronics. The trap was almost ready when Admiral Kethver sent his final ultimatum to Earth. The message was broadcast on every frequency and showed images of the Zephyrian invasion fleet moving toward the inner solar system. Massive warships that could destroy cities with single shots approached like wolves moving toward a wounded deer. People of Earth, your time has ended, announced the Admiral from his flagship. We have detected your pathetic attempts to prepare defenses. Your chemical rockets and metal bullets cannot harm our vessels. Surrender now, and we will allow half of your population to live as workers. President Helen Carter responded with a message that was broadcast throughout human space. She stood in the White House surrounded by military advisors and spoke with calm determination. Admiral Kethver and the forces of the Zephyrian Empire, Earth rejects your ultimatum. We will never surrender our freedom to any foreign power. The President paused and looked directly into the camera. You have made a mistake by threatening the human race. You think you know what we are capable of, but you are wrong. Come and take our planet if you can. You will find that humans fight harder for their homes than any species you have ever encountered. The alien response was immediate and brutal. Energy beams lanced out from the Zephyrian ships and destroyed several outer system monitoring stations. The attacks were meant to show Earth that resistance was hopeless, but they had the opposite effect. Every human who saw the destruction felt their resolve grow stronger. Jake Morrison watched the alien fleet advance toward the inner planets and felt a cold smile cross his face. The Zephyrians were moving exactly as predicted. They had committed their entire force to a single massive attack that would bring them close enough to Earth for the trap to spring. All hidden units maintain positions, he ordered over the encrypted communication system. Wait for the signal. Remember, we only get one chance at this. If we fail, Earth falls. Amy Rodriguez checked the defensive positions around Earth one final time. Weapon systems that had been disguised as communication towers and power plants were ready to activate. Underground bunkers filled with armed civilians waited to begin the kind of urban warfare that humans had been perfecting for thousands of years. The Zephyrian fleet reached the orbit of Mars and began the final approach to Earth. Admiral Kethver stood on his bridge looking at the blue planet that would soon belong to his empire. He had no idea that he was flying into the most sophisticated trap in military history. Begin the orbital bombardment, he ordered his weapons officers. Target their major cities first. Once their population centers are destroyed, the survivors will surrender immediately. The Admiral was about to learn that he had made the biggest mistake in Zephyrian history. He had assumed that humans would react to overwhelming force the same way every other species had reacted. He was wrong. The first Zephyrian energy beams struck Earth's atmosphere and hit what should have been defenseless cities. Instead, they encountered energy shields that materialized out of nowhere, powered by fusion reactors hidden deep underground. The alien weapons that could destroy asteroids barely scratched the human defenses. Admiral Kethver stared at his tactical display in confusion. His sensors showed that the humans had somehow deployed defensive technology that rivaled Zephyrian engineering. How is this possible? He demanded from his bridge crew. Our intelligence reports showed they had no energy shield technology. The answer came in the form of Jake Morrison's hidden fleet emerging from asteroid fields throughout the solar system. Ships that had appeared to be mining equipment suddenly revealed massive weapon arrays. The Zephyrians found themselves surrounded by enemies they had not even known existed. All units commence Operation Target, ordered Jake over the human communication network. Hit them with everything we have. Show these aliens what happens when they threaten Earth. The modified frequency disruptors that Dr. Lisa Parker and Dr. Ken Taylor had developed activated simultaneously across the human fleet. The Zephyrian ships suddenly found their energy shields fluctuating and failing. Weapon systems malfunctioned and navigation computers began showing false readings. Captain Amy Rodriguez coordinated the ground defenses as Zephyrian dropships attempted to land troops in major cities. What the aliens expected to find were frightened civilians hiding in buildings. Instead, they encountered coordinated resistance from fighters who knew every street, every rooftop, and every sewer tunnel. The first wave of Zephyrian soldiers landed in what they thought was downtown Los Angeles. They wore powered armor and carried energy weapons that could cut through steel. But the humans were not fighting them with steel. They were fighting with cunning and intimate knowledge of their own territory. Hidden fighters emerged from underground tunnels and attacked the aliens from behind. Improvised explosive devices destroyed Zephyrian vehicles while human snipers picked off individual soldiers from concealed positions. The aliens had superior technology, but they were fighting blind in an environment designed to trap them. Target their command ships, ordered General Pete Williams from his underground command center. The humans had learned from intercepted communications that the Zephyrian fleet relied heavily on centralized control. If they could disable the command vessels, the entire alien formation would fall into chaos. Jake Morrison led a squadron of hidden warships against Admiral Kethver's flagship. The human vessels looked like simple cargo haulers until their disguised armor plating fell away to reveal military-grade weapons. Electromagnetic pulse missiles designed specifically to disable Zephyrian electronics streaked across space toward their targets. The Admiral watched in growing panic as his fleet began to fall apart around him. Ships that had been invincible for 3 centuries suddenly found themselves vulnerable to human weapons. The electronic interference was disrupting every system on his vessels, including life support and artificial gravity. "Impossible," he said, while grabbing onto his command chair as the ship shook from human missile impacts. "These creatures should not have technology capable of harming us. Our intelligence reports were completely wrong." On Earth's surface, Amy Rodriguez led a team of fighters through the ruins of a Zephyrian landing zone. The aliens had managed to establish a small base, but they were trapped inside it by human forces that attacked from every direction. Every time the Zephyrians tried to advance, they were met by defenders who seemed to appear out of the ground itself. "They fight like no species we have ever encountered," reported Commander Vexthare to his admiral over a damaged communication link. "They do not mass their forces for direct assault. Instead, they attack in small groups that coordinate with each other. When we respond to one attack, 3 more begin from different directions." The Zephyrian ground troops had been trained to fight enemies who would meet them in open battle. They had weapons and armor designed to win through superior firepower. But the humans refused to fight that kind of battle. They used guerrilla tactics that turned every engagement into a nightmare of confusion and surprise attacks. Dr. Lisa Parker monitored the battle from her laboratory and made real-time adjustments to the electronic warfare systems. Every time the Zephyrians adapted to one frequency, she changed to another. The aliens found themselves in a constant state of electronic disruption that made their advanced technology more of a burden than an advantage. "Their weakness is their dependence on automation," she reported to the military commanders. "Without their computer systems, they cannot coordinate their forces effectively. We are essentially fighting their machines, not their soldiers." Ken Taylor had discovered something even more important during his analysis of Zephyrian biology. The aliens had evolved in a low-gravity environment, and their bodies were not adapted for extended combat in Earth's heavier gravity. Their powered armor compensated for this weakness, but only when it was functioning properly. Human fighters began targeting the power systems of Zephyrian armor with precisely aimed electromagnetic pulses. When the alien suits failed, their occupants found themselves struggling to move in the unfamiliar gravity. Warriors who had conquered 17 star systems became helpless in the environment they had come to conquer. The space battle reached its climax when Jake Morrison's flagship engaged Admiral Kethfer's command ship in direct combat. The human vessel was smaller and less heavily armed, but it was crewed by fighters who had trained their entire lives for this moment. "This is for threatening our home," said Jake as his ship's weapons found their target. The modified human missiles penetrated the failing Zephyrian shields and struck the alien vessel's main reactor. Explosions ripped through the massive ship as its own power systems turned against it. Admiral Kethfer felt his flagship dying around him and finally understood the magnitude of his mistake. The humans had not just defeated his fleet, they had outthought and outfought warriors who had never known defeat. His empire's reputation for invincibility was crumbling along with his ships. "All vessels retreat to jump distance," he ordered over the communication system, but many of his ships were too damaged to respond. The human electronic warfare had destroyed their navigation systems, and they were trapped in Earth's gravity well. Amy Rodriguez stood in the ruins of what had been a Zephyrian forward base and watched the alien survivors surrender. The creatures who had threatened to enslave humanity were now begging for mercy from the very people they had planned to conquer. "Secure the prisoners and salvage their equipment," she ordered her fighters. "We are going to learn everything we can about their technology and their empire. This war is not over yet." The battle for Earth was ending, but Jake Morrison knew that the larger conflict was just beginning. The Zephyrians had revealed themselves to be weaker than they appeared, and now it was time for humanity to carry the fight to them. The species that had thought they found easy prey had instead awakened something they were not prepared to face. Admiral Kethfer's damaged flagship limped toward the edge of the solar system with the few surviving ships of his once mighty fleet. Behind them, Earth burned with the fires of victory, while human vessels pursued the retreating aliens like wolves, chasing wounded prey. "Sir, the humans are not letting us escape," reported the navigation officer with fear in his yellow eyes. Their ships are faster than our damaged vessels, and they have positioned forces to block our retreat routes. Jake Morrison led the pursuit in his battle-scarred warship, surrounded by captured Zephyrian vessels that had been quickly repaired and crewed by human fighters. The aliens had expected their technology to be impossible for primitive humans, too. Understand, they were wrong again. "This is Captain Morrison to the Zephyrian fleet," he broadcast on all frequencies. "Your invasion has failed and your ships are trapped. Surrender immediately, and we will treat your crews according to the laws of war." The Admiral looked around his ruined bridge and felt something he had never experienced before: fear. In 300 years of conquest, the Zephyrian Empire had never been defeated by any enemy. Now, a species they had dismissed as primitive savages had destroyed his fleet and was demanding his surrender. "Never," he replied over the communication channel. "The Zephyrian Empire does not surrender to inferior species. We would rather die than submit to human authority." President Helen Carter stood in the Situation Room watching the pursuit on tactical displays. Around her, military advisors and scientists analyzed the captured alien technology that was already revealing secrets about the Zephyrian Empire. "Dr. Parker, what have you learned from the alien prisoners?" asked the President, Lisa. Parker looked up from her data tablets with excitement in her eyes. "Madam President, the Zephyrian Empire is much weaker than they pretended to be. Their 17 conquered worlds are held by skeleton crews, and their total military force is smaller than we estimated. The captured navigation data from Zephyrian ships had revealed the locations of every world in their empire. More importantly, it showed that the aliens had spread themselves too thin across too much territory. Each conquered planet was controlled by only a few thousand Zephyrian soldiers. Their entire strategy depends on intimidation and superior technology," continued Dr. Parker. "When that fails, they have no backup plan. We can use this against them." President Carter made a decision that shocked even her own advisors. "General Williams, I want you to prepare an expeditionary force. We are not just going to defend Earth, we are going to liberate every world under Zephyrian control." Captain Amy Rodriguez was chosen to lead the first strike against a Zephyrian stronghold, using captured alien ships loaded with human fighters. She led an attack force toward the nearest conquered world. The planet was called Karanos, and it had been under alien rule for 50 years. The journey took 2 weeks. Using Zephyrian faster-than-light technology that human engineers were rapidly learning to operate. When Amy's fleet arrived at Karanos, they found exactly what the intelligence reports had predicted: a small garrison of Zephyrian troops controlling millions of enslaved aliens. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the Terran Liberation Fleet," she broadcast. "To the planet's surface. We are here to free you from Zephyrian oppression. All slaves and prisoners prepare for immediate evacuation." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Creatures that looked like giant insects emerged from underground hiding places and began attacking their Zephyrian guards. Other enslaved species joined the revolt as word spread that the invincible empire had been defeated by humans. Dr. Ken Taylor had developed a way to broadcast human tactical manuals and resistance strategies directly into the communication networks of conquered worlds. The same technology the Zephyrians used to control their slaves became the method for organizing rebellion. "Every species under Zephyrian rule is receiving detailed instructions on how to fight back," he reported to General Williams. "We are teaching them the same guerrilla tactics that worked on Earth. The aliens cannot stop the transmissions without shutting down their own command systems." On 17 different worlds, enslaved populations began coordinated uprisings. The Zephyrian garrison troops found themselves facing the same kind of chaotic multi-front warfare that had destroyed their invasion fleet at Earth. Species that had been peaceful slaves for generations suddenly became dangerous enemies. Jake Morrison led the assault on the Zephyrian command world where their ruling council had governed the Empire for centuries. The planet was heavily fortified and defended by their most advanced ships, but the human attack caught them completely by surprise. "They never expected anyone to bring the war to them," observed Jake, as his fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel directly above the alien capital city. For 300 years, they have been the hunters. Now they are learning what it feels like to be prey. The space battle above the Zephyrian homeworld was brief and decisive. The alien defenders were demoralized by reports of defeats throughout. Their empire and many ships surrendered without fighting. Those that did resist found their weapons ineffective against human electronic warfare systems. Admiral Kethfer watched the destruction of his empire from his damaged ship and finally understood the magnitude of his failure. The humans had not just defeated his fleet, they had inspired rebellion throughout Zephyrian space. 17 worlds that had been peaceful for generations were now in open revolt. "Sir, we are receiving surrender requests from 14 different worlds," reported his communication officer. "The garrison commanders are asking for permission to negotiate with human forces." The admiral closed his yellow eyes and felt the weight of centuries of Zephyrian dominance crashing down around him. "Send the surrender signal," he said quietly. "Tell all remaining forces to lay down their weapons and submit to human authority." Amy Rodriguez stood on the bridge of her captured Zephyrian flagship and watched alien soldiers emerge from their fortifications with their hands raised in surrender. All around her, freed slaves celebrated their liberation, while human medics treated the wounded and human engineers restored damaged infrastructure. "This is just the beginning," she said to her crew. "We have proven that the Zephyrian Empire can be defeated. Now we need to make sure that no other species ever has to suffer under alien oppression again." The revolution spread faster than anyone had expected. Within 3 months of the failed invasion of Earth, the entire Zephyrian Empire had collapsed. Species that had been enslaved for generations were free, and the galaxy's most feared military force had been reduced to scattered groups of refugees. Jake Morrison received a message from the last functioning Zephyrian Command Center requesting terms for total surrender. The aliens who had threatened to destroy humanity were now begging for mercy from the very people they had planned to enslave. "Tell them we will accept their surrender," he replied. "But first they must stand trial for their crimes against every species they have oppressed. Justice will be served for 300 years of conquest and slavery." The hunter had become the hunted, and the Zephyrian Empire had learned too late that some prey fights back harder than anything they had ever encountered. 6 months after the failed invasion of Earth, the last Zephyrian stronghold surrendered to human forces. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship in orbit above the alien homeworld and watched as former slaves walked free through cities that had once been symbols of oppression. The Zephyrian Empire that had terrorized the galaxy for 3 centuries was gone. In its place, 17 liberated worlds were learning to govern themselves while human advisors helped establish new governments based on freedom and cooperation instead of fear and domination. President Helen Carter addressed the newly formed Galactic Council from the Assembly Hall on Earth. Representatives from every freed species sat together as equals for the first time in their history. The chamber buzzed with excitement as former enemies worked together to build a better future. "Today marks the beginning of a new era," announced the president to the assembled delegates. "The Terran Liberation Alliance is founded on the principle that all intelligent species have the right to determine their own destiny. We will never allow another empire like the Zephyrians to rise again." Dr. Lisa Parker had been chosen as the first director of the Xenological Ethics Council, which would oversee all contact between different species. Her job was to ensure that humanity's expansion into space would be based on cooperation and mutual benefit rather than conquest and exploitation. "We have learned from the mistakes of the Zephyrians," she explained to the council. "Superior technology does not give any species the right to dominate others. We will share our knowledge freely and work together to solve the challenges facing all of our worlds." The trials of Zephyrian war criminals began on the neutral world of Kuranos, which had been the first planet liberated by human forces. Admiral Keffer and his surviving officers stood before a tribunal that included representatives from every species their empire had oppressed. "You stand accused of crimes against 17 different civilizations," announced the chief judge, who belonged to a species that looked like walking trees. Slavery, murder, and genocide committed over 3 centuries of expansion. How do you answer these charges? Admiral Kethver looked around the courtroom at the faces of creatures his empire had enslaved, tortured, and killed. For the first time in his life, he felt something approaching shame. "We believed we were bringing order to the galaxy," he said quietly. "We thought inferior species needed our guidance." "You thought wrong," replied the judge. "Your empire brought only suffering and death. The evidence shows that you destroyed entire civilizations simply because they refused to submit to your rule." The trials lasted for months as witness testified about Zephyrian atrocities. Species that had been forbidden to speak for generations finally had their voices heard. The full scope of the Empire's crimes shocked even the human observers who had fought against them. Captain Amy Rodriguez took command of the new Terran exploration fleet, which was tasked with making contact with other species beyond the former Zephyrian territory. Her ships carried scientists and diplomats instead of weapons, and her mission was to offer friendship and cooperation to any civilizations they encountered. "We are explorers, not conquerors," she explained to her crew as they prepared for humanity's first peaceful contact mission. "We will visit new worlds as guests, not invaders. Our goal is to learn from other species and share what we have learned." The first alien species they encountered were called the Vortani, and they lived on a water world near the galactic rim. The Vortani looked like intelligent dolphins and had never been contacted by the Zephyrian Empire because their planet had no valuable resources. "We greet you in peace," transmitted Amy as her ship approached their world. "We are humans from the planet Earth. We seek friendship and knowledge, not conquest or tribute." The Vortani response was cautious but curious. They had heard rumors about the fall of the Zephyrian Empire and the strange species that had liberated the galaxy. They agreed to meet with the human delegation in the shallow seas of their homeworld. Dr. Ken Taylor led the scientific exchange program that shared human technology with the liberated worlds while learning from alien innovations. The combination of different approaches to science and engineering led to breakthroughs that benefited everyone in the alliance. "Each species brings unique perspectives to solving problems," he reported to the Galactic Council. "The Karanites are masters of biological engineering, while the Sithic understand energy manipulation better than anyone. By working together, we can achieve things that no single species could accomplish alone." The network of cooperation that replaced the Zephyrian Empire grew stronger every year. Trade routes connected dozens of worlds, while communication networks allowed instant contact between species separated by hundreds of light years. What had once been a region of fear and oppression became a beacon of hope for the entire galaxy. Jake Morrison was promoted to Admiral and given command of the Alliance Defense Force, which protected member worlds from any remaining threats. The military doctrine he developed was based on collective defense rather than aggressive expansion. "We fight only to protect freedom," he told his officers during their first training exercise. "We will never use our strength to dominate others the way the Zephyrians did. Our weapons exist to defend peace, not to create empires." The alliance grew as more species requested membership. Some were refugees from other parts of the galaxy where oppressive governments still existed. Others were newly contacted civilizations that chose cooperation over isolation. All were welcomed as equals regardless of their technology or military strength. Admiral Kethver was sentenced to life imprisonment on a prison world where he would spend his remaining years thinking about the consequences of his actions. His final statement to the court was brief and bitter. "You humans have won this time," he said while being led away in restraints. "But someone else will rise to challenge your alliance. The galaxy has always been ruled by the strong, and that will never change." Judge Morrison, who had been chosen to oversee the trials, shook her head sadly. "You still do not understand, Admiral. We are not ruling the galaxy, we are serving it. There is a difference that you may never comprehend." President Carter stood in her office looking out at the night sky above Washington. Each star represented worlds where former slaves now lived in freedom and species that had been enemies now worked together as friends. The human dream of a peaceful galaxy was becoming reality. The communication system on her desk buzzed with an incoming message from the exploration fleet. Captain Rodriguez was reporting contact with another intelligent species that seemed interested in joining the Alliance. A network of cooperation was expanding again. Madam President, the Downet Collective has agreed to establish diplomatic relations, reported Amy from her ship near the galactic core. They are offering to share their knowledge of stellar engineering in exchange for our medical technology. The President smiled and authorized the exchange. This was what victory looked like. Not conquered worlds or enslaved populations, but free beings choosing to work together for the benefit of all. The Zephyrians had thought they found easy prey when they discovered Earth, but instead they had awakened something much more dangerous than any weapon. They had awakened hope.